the question is addressed to me, right? Because you broke
development in decline.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty obvious that. Okay. Well,
yes, it's addressed to you.
Yeah. It's pretty obvious that we are looking at almost a stillbirth of a democracy. This would be equivalent to a person who is coming of age that finds themselves bedeviled by challenges that if those challenges are not addressed, could literally kill the person or the patient. So I would consider Nigeria a developing and evolving democracy that was a serious malaise that will need to be addressed at this point in time if the patient Nigeria is to survive as an entity, as a political entity.
Let me say at this juncture that the location of our host is raining there, and I'm told that when it's raining in Nigeria, you expect some hiccups. So I will ask our guests to please, take control on some occasions, and you know what to tell us, so you can simply develop your team without necessarily waiting for our guests to come on board, unless we now ask until the time we want our guests to ask some questions. I don't know whether you understand what I mean.
Thank you, Mr. Elomba. I think, given the technical limitations, we certainly will do our part to keep the interview going for the sake of the many guests that you have out.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I apologize for really giving me trouble right now. With this experience you have, can you say what exactly is the process of Nigeria? Is it the politics or the governance?
Well, it's a combination of the two, because if you don't have a proper foundation and you are trying to build something out of nothing, then of course you're going to have problems right there at the onset, or you're going to have problems a little bit down the road, regardless of how glamorous it may have appeared at one time on paper. So the whole process of governance in Nigeria is a reflection of the politics of how the people actually get into governance. You cannot sow a different crop and reap a different crop. So once you are in a situation where you have sown oranges, you would expect to reap oranges. Anything beyond that will be unnatural. And so we need to look obviously at the politics of the environment, how people actually come to power, and then how the people govern. And once you look at those, you find that there's a serious disconnect from the actual process of coming to power, which does not reflect democracy the way democracy is designed to be. And as a matter of fact, given the development of and evolution of governance around the world, a democratic government is the best thing that we have right now, that the world has right now. Until someone comes up with something better, as imperfect as democracy is, then we are stuck with democracy for now. But the problem with Nigeria is that if you have to practice something, then you have to practice it according to a certain model, according to the way it has worked, according to the best practices in it. And so far, we are not seeing that. And that, in spite of all of the imperfections of democracy, you find that democracy would work if you apply and practice the model, the existing models that personify success in democracy. hopefully that begins to open
Okay,
our business.
so how can we correct the practice of democracy in Nigeria currently?
Well, first we have to look at the system that we're practicing. Since 1979, Nigeria transitioned to the US style democracy, the US style of federalism. And in that system, there is substantial power that is devoted to the states. In fact, the federal government in a democracy that is patterned or modeled after the United States has limited roles. The states are so strong in their own individual units that they're almost like countries. They have their own police, they have their own judiciary, they have their own school system, their own public health system. A whole lot of these things are run at the state level. Now, the federal government exists in situations where the country may need to face external aggression, and so the country will now build up its resources from the sum of its parts, which are the states. But in Nigeria, it's actually being practiced upside down, because it's almost unthinkable that all the 50 states of the United States will converge in Washington, D.C. to collect money monthly, such as that's what happens in Nigeria. In the Nigerian budget system, the whole idea that the states, whether it's a Zamfara state or Anambra state or Kano state, will not put energy in generating their own internal revenue, but rather will plan on going to the capital to share whatever it is that is available at the national capital. I mean, that in itself begins a chain of complications that renders the states to be states only in name and not in otherwise democratic practices. And security also is a very strong part of states' rights, because only people within a state would know who the bad actors are within their own state, and should be able to have a system to either handle their bad actors or to contain their bad actors. But in a situation where the governor of a state does not have police under their control, a matter as local and as basic as policing under their control, then that is democracy operating upside down.
Okay, so you once described Nigeria as a leading Black nation in the world. Do you still feel this way?
Well, it's potentially so, but it has been sort of stifled by the fact that the ingredients that would have made that country achieve that potential have been held moribund. And part of the problem is what exists internally in the system. And what the panacea actually could be is reflected in how Nigerians outside of Nigeria perform when they're outside of Nigeria, their competitiveness, their capacity to excel in just about every field. And so when you now juxtapose that on what goes on inside Nigeria, people outside of Nigeria who are non-Nigerians, they wonder, how can individual Nigerians do some of these great things that you're able to do outside of Nigeria, but Nigeria as it currently exists is a pit, is a cesspool. So it creates a very big dilemma, which is part of the reason why we're having this conversation, because the dilemma is, if individual Nigerian actors who find themselves outside of Nigeria as economic refugees or professionals in their own rank are able to compete well and excel, then how does that get transplanted into the country? what are the problems that need to be addressed into the country to set that stage for those people who make up Nigeria to also create a nation that is powerful, diverse, strong, and a nation that can meet the standards of in the Committee of Nations as far as development and everything else.
Okay, remember that you can join the discussion simply by raising up your digital hand, and I will try to accommodate your questions and comments if time permits us. Now, Mr. Okey, you have experience in Capitol Hill. You were the former commissioner for housing in Maryland, Washington, D.C. How can you relate your experience there with the Nigerian system?
Well, it's fairly straightforward because there are even God himself originally laid out various models of doing certain things, but beyond where God stopped, humans have learned what works and what doesn't work. For example, ever since man's invention of the wheel, we have found that for anything to move rapidly, you have to strap wheels on it. That is the best model that humanity has right now. Okay, and in that same vein, if you have been a part of a government that has been, pretty much evolving towards perfection as much as they can over the past 250 years, then you have seen models of what makes governance work, what makes governance impact the desired target and the population, and what keeps people from essentially going crazy and butchering each other. Now, all of those models are adaptable, can be adapted to Nigeria if there's an opportunity to do that. But the situation of Nigeria at this point certainly makes it difficult because over the past, I would say maybe over the past even 20 years, you will find that the people who have run Nigeria and are running Nigeria now certainly.
This is my own opinion. It is my opinion. I don't think any religion is a problem in itself.
I think there's a voice in the background.
Please, yes, continue. Sorry, that was just an interruption. We've corrected that. Please, you were saying something.
Yes. Okay. So basically, the actors in Nigeria this time have to, by design or by default, inculcate certain things in governance for Nigeria to move forward. Now, the reasons why they may not be able to inculcate those things, a combination of things. One of it is basic competence, because you cannot hand the fate of 200 million people to somebody who doesn't have the basic competence. That's why people are nominated. That's why elections are held. Then, second of all, is do the actors have an agenda? If some actors have an agenda to create imaginary or real advantages for a subset of their perceived people, in quote, then the solution to that will be for the person to get the understanding, at least at the national level, that for a nation to arise, the tribes must die. For a nation to arise, the tribes must die. And we're talking about the kind of primordial thinking that can clog somebody's mind when they think they are in power to look out for some group or the other without looking at the national scope of that country. So that's part of all of the things that Nigerians need to look at squarely, very squarely, and determine, do they want to grow as a nation? Do they want to get to a level where it's a developed country and they can enjoy the dividends that come from being in a developed country, not given to the current state of insecurity, where basically the country is falling apart. And sometimes it appears that the government gets carried away with people who come out with placards and say that do revolution this, revolution that. But the reality is that the revolution in Nigeria started a while ago. It's already on. It's already happening in the Northeast with all the Boko Haram issue that has been on for the past 10, 12, 15 years now. And then they are spread to the Northwest and North Central with all the banditry and the every man for himself activities of the herdsmen and everyone else. And then it's spreading to the South with the insecurity that is currently creeping up in the Southeast and in the Southwest. So the revolution is already on. It's just that the actors perhaps are wearing a veil where they don't want to call it a revolution, but the revolution has already started. And if nothing happens, it will end up consuming everyone. And that is
okay. So we have a hand on Elumba television. I can see your hand up. The platform is yours. You can ask a question.
Mr. Tony Mbonu, my question will be, you move around the power brokers in Washington, D.C. I know that. You have organized conferences where American politicians are present. And I'm sure you will be aware that John Campbell once said, not too long ago, that the United States government should consider Nigeria a failed state. Do you agree with that? And if you do you think that Nigeria has lost its influence in the global scene today?
Well, okay, I wouldn't go as far as to agree completely that it's a failed state, but it is a state that is in danger of failing because of the various direct and indirect issues that are trying to overwhelm the country right now. And the chief among them will be security or insecurity, as you may choose to describe it. And I think the situation is salvageable if there's a conscious effort. There has to be a very conscious effort, both on the part of whoever ultimately leads that country or governs that country over the next few years. But people can also decide to raise their hands and say, well, it's done. There's nothing that can be done. But that is a matter of the fact that people giving up without an effort, without a struggle to save and contain the place. If an effort is not made to contain the place and the place fails entirely, then essentially it will be the last of the modern opportunities that an African country has had to assert themselves at the world stage. All the ingredients are there, except for the will of the people of the country to build a great nation. And so,
okay,
let me ask
you want to ask something?
Let me ask you a second question. Do you think that the United States is currently ignoring Nigeria? The last US president to visit Nigeria, if I'm correct, should be President Clinton. Nigeria used to factor greatly in the calculations of United States policy. We know how Murtala Muhammad countered America with respect to the foreign policy towards Angola. So before United States will take a position regarding Africa, they will have to consider what will Nigeria do. But today we no longer see that happening, to the extent that the highest US official that now could visit Nigeria, if any at all, will be the US Secretary of State. What do you think?
Yeah, well, certainly that reflects a serious problem that is not only based on American perception, but the reality on the ground. If you do not get your house in order, if a country does not get its house in order and is not able to bring a certain respectability to the Committee of Nations, then they begin to lose their influence rapidly. And that has been happening over the past, maybe even the past 15 to 20 years, because incrementally, the opportunities that were wasted begin to build up. If it gets to a point where you cannot handle the internal security of your place, then you actually will get limited help from people until things fall apart. Because nations are like individuals. They have their issues to take care of. Everyone has their family. Everyone has their own infrastructures to improve on. Nobody is sitting still. Now, their first priority, of course, whether it's the United States or UK or Japan, is to shore up their own situation before stretching out to try to build alliances and to keep an eye on what's going on. And so everyone has to bring something to the table. But lately, Nigeria has not been able to bring a lot to the table. And the one economic asset that Nigeria had over the past 50 years, I'll say, which is their capacity to provide a portion of the energy for global use, is dwindling by the day, because the world is actually not sitting still. The world has moved on, or is evolving to a point where the economy that comes out of the sources of energy is changing rapidly with renewable energy and stuff like that. And with the United States themselves producing enough oil for their own internal use, and they even exporting some, you find that the influence that Nigeria had back when it was able to scale up or scale down the oil production is no longer there. And then if you add that to the fact that if you're not able to contain the internal security of your own space, then these countries are perhaps going to sit still and watch you fall apart, and then people can pick up the pieces to the extent that they can. So it's an issue that is real, and it's an issue that only the actors in Nigeria and the people of Nigeria, through force of will begin to create the enabling environment to have the country begin to rise back up to where it should be. But there's been a lot of wasted opportunities. And I don't think the opportunities will remain forever. I think we might just have a window of time to begin to put the pieces together. And after which, if Nigeria does not put the pieces together, then we're going to be the territory of that failed state environment.
Okay, remember that you can participate in the conversation simply by raising up your digital hand, and I will try to accommodate as much questions and comments as possible. Okay, let's look at Nigerian foreign policy. This is something that embodies the country's national interest, and it's a means to interact with the international community. Do you think that the current foreign policy Nigeria is pursuing is also part of the problem, looking at the decline of Nigeria in the eyes of the international community?
Well, the foreign policy that Nigeria is pursuing right now is actually not coherent, at least in the eyes of the world, because you have to have a defined goal, and you have to be able to bring your influence to exert towards others to back that goal. But we don't quite see a clearly defined goal right now. And you cannot, even in the biggest issue in Nigeria today, which is security or insecurity, you probably can't get too far by sitting still and waiting for the world to come to your rescue. Now, certain things are international and are such that nobody would want a situation where a crisis in one country can stretch to begin to overwhelm other countries and ultimately their country. So at that point, yeah, maybe some very drastic interventions might happen. But foreign policy right now, as far as Nigeria's own foreign policy is concerned, it's questionable whether there's a clearly defined foreign policy right now.
Okay, let us hear from Chadwick Okoye. Chadwick Okoye, your hand is up. The platform is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay. When I hear people discussing Nigeria and I see people not really looking into the issues, I keep on marveling whether people are not really seeing what the actual issues are in Nigeria. Let me take an example, what recently happened in Afghanistan. The US has been in Afghanistan for almost 20 years now, trying to install democracy in Afghanistan. And the Taliban has been trying to also take over the government of Afghanistan due to the core beliefs and principles of what I believe is their culture. At the moment US pulled out, Taliban took over, meaning that all the effort US has been making for over 20 years yielded nothing, because even the army they may have raised in Afghanistan share the same view with most of the Taliban. Now, we come to Nigeria. Is it not clear to us that what Nigeria is suffering from is two opposite civilization? The core north believes in caliphate, and unfortunately, the core north is in charge of Nigeria today. And they are implementing the beliefs of the Islamic caliphate. And then the south, who are mainly civilized territories, are struggling between the north and the south. So there are two different civilizations fighting each other in that whole territory. Are people not seeing this? I bet you that if the core Arewa North is not part of Nigeria today, Nigeria will be moving as fast as possible. Now, my question is, how do you believe that Nigeria will ever go any further with the principle and culture of the Arewa North, who believes that the entire territory must convert to Islam and become under the caliphate? And this is why Boko Haram has not been able to be defeated, because even the people who are fighting Boko Haram share some values with them. That is why the war can be defeated. So let us look into this issue, and discuss what the core issue is in Nigeria, and not just painting things, and things continue to degenerate every year. It gets worse.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chadwick Okoye. Let us allow Mr. Okoye to answer that question. You heard him, Mr. Okoye?
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Okoye. Well, see, the situation is that when you look at a country like Nigeria and you look at the Nigerian situation, you have to look at it as holistically as possible. You consider it as, if you're going to build a house, there are modern standards and modern things, each of which has to be accounted for before you actually build that as a study house. And granted, there's a huge division between the religious north and the Christian south of Nigeria, but it actually goes beyond that, because even within the north of Nigeria, it's not homogeneous as people thought it may have been. Okay, now because it's not homogeneous, yeah, okay, there's a risk that the northern Nigerian region, which probably has, I would say maybe 65, 70% Muslim, while there's about a 30% Christian community dispersed all over the north, there's a chance that that kind of environment exclusively on its own could be overwhelmed by a Taliban style agenda. But the rest of Nigeria is a whole different story. It is extremely difficult based on all the human factors that are available today for an Islamic government to overwhelm the entire southern Nigeria. It is not as simple and as easy as it may appear for someone who's looking at it from a certain prism, because the southern part of Nigeria has peculiarities, very many peculiarities that make it a little more complex for someone even to come in with an invading army to overwhelm the place. The bigger problem in Nigeria, from some of the views that we have seen, is that even the south of Nigeria does not have sufficient homogeneity or means of perhaps coming together rapidly as a strong opposing force to oppose the north. If there was a line drawn between the north and the south of Nigeria, the south of Nigeria has its own elements of heterogeneity. And then also the south of Nigeria is not really completely united, especially the southwest of Nigeria and the southeast of Nigeria have not come to a point where they see problems from the same exact lens. And so these things become a little more complex when it comes to the actual application. Yeah, the religious issue, these are big issues. These are actually among the things that will need to die for a country and a nation to emerge. Because at this point in time, even though I used the analogy of the tribe must have to die, but religion, you know, whether it's the Christian religion or the Muslim religion, has to have its limitations in a supposedly secular country. And the sooner those two aspects of social life in Nigeria, religion, the Muslim religion and the Christian religion, begin to take a back seat to actual progression of a society, the more difficult it's going to be. And consider that a nation like Japan, for example, Japan, pretty much a world power in every aspect of the world, but nobody goes to church or goes to a mosque in Japan. Religion it's something they hear about maybe on TV when they're looking at foreign news. And so, but the average Japanese gets to live to be 100 years, gets to operate in an environment where there's clean water, there's clean roads, there's trash picked up, you know, there's what a Nigerian would consider heaven on earth. So the whole idea of, you know, perhaps a society that is skewed in the concept of Islamic culture versus a country, a southern part of the country that is skewed from the constructs of Christianity is only a problem to the extent that the people have allowed it to be a problem. You know, we need to, there's a lot of parochial thinking in Nigeria. There's a whole lot of parochial thinking that in itself is so limiting that if that frame of mind doesn't begin to change, we probably won't see substantial development in Nigeria for the next 100 years. And I'll tell you, even in Saudi Arabia, where the Nigerian Muslims consider as, you know, their place of holiness, have undergone so much changes that as at 2 years ago, the Saudi started a ministry of entertainment because they wanted to be a little more secular and create some kind of a recreation for their people so that everyone is not operating with their head stuck in the Quran. Because these are the things that make a nation great. You know, the fact that a nation has a holistic cover of every aspect of life. Art is as important as science. You know, new technology and knowledge and technology are as important as the rudimentary services that exist in a country. So all of these things have to holistically come together for people to actually begin to enjoy living in that space called Nigeria. And I'll tell you something about Nigeria that perhaps people who have lived in Nigeria all their life that have not had a chance to look at Nigeria from the outside looking in, is that Nigeria has something you cannot take away from them, even if you killed everybody in Nigeria and leave 10 million people to start afresh. And that is the art and the rhythm that West Africans, particularly Nigerians, carry in their DNA. Now, the average person in Nigeria doesn't think that maybe making music, it's a big deal. But the rest of the world, Europeans, Asians, they actually have to write music down to be able to make it. But in Nigeria and West Africa, music is like a spontaneous creativity kind of thing. You put a 7-year-old kid who was born and raised in Nigeria, and you're singing or doing something, and they might be tapping some drum beat on the table. And that sense of rhythm and sense of art is unique to West Africans. So far, I've been in about 12 countries around the world in all of the continents, North America, Asia, Europe, Central America. And you find that people don't have that instantaneous creativity that people in West Africa seem to have, particularly Nigeria. And that also explains why today, in today's internet generation, you can visit every big city in all of the 50 states of the United States. And if you go into a lounge, you hear Nigerian music played before you hear 3 or 4 songs. Now, those things are things that are ingrained in the average Nigerian, not the oil on the ground, because the oil on the ground is going to be irrelevant someday. But industries can be developed right around that creativity that can ensure that Nigerians begin to live a better life because they have an opportunity to sell those things internationally. And as a matter of fact, part of the reason why the US became a superpower over the past, in the 20th century, was not just because they had good roads and good infrastructure and had industries and all that, but also because of the culture that US projected around the world. And that culture was attractive because it was the first time that there's a fusion between African culture and European culture. And the African culture created the music and the spin-off of the art that was projected more in the United States. And Hollywood as an industry and the industry of California, which was centered around that, and New York, became one of the prime exports of America. The entertainment that came out of those areas of America, still one of the most powerful. Yes.
Okay, doctor. That's okay. Sorry, pretty short. Let us take more hands. Due to time constraint, I'll ask you to keep your questions or your submissions very brief as possible, so we can take all the hands before our time, before we have to end the show. Dr. Tony, please keep your question very brief as possible. After a minute, I'm going to cut it short. Dr. Tony.
I think the idea of briefs should lie with lawyers who normally write briefs. Historians don't normally write briefs. So I don't, it's not in my culture. That language is for lawyers like our guest and Mr. Elomba. The basic fact is this. Most of our people outside Nigeria, they live on theoretical prisons about the reality on ground about Nigeria. First, and this is where I actually like him to, the major question I'm going to ask him before I put in some agenda. Israel today is very powerful, mainly because of the proactive dispositions of her diaspora.
Yep.
Yes, and Nigeria, and we are talking about Israeli policy, Israeli strength in the war today. It does not lie only on the people living in Israel today. It lies mainly on the strength of the diaspora. For example, the Balfour Declaration of November 1917 was a letter written by Rothschild, Count Rothschild, a businessman, to the Queen, asking him to give his people a country. That Balfour Declaration, it was a letter written by a single man. That's to show you. And today you are in US. You know that every presidential candidate in US will address the Israeli AIPAC, or whatever it's called, in US today, before the president, and they give them promises. I know that anybody, no presidential candidate that will come out for his campaign in US without trying in one way or the other to appease Israel. And it took Obama the tail end of his regime for him to revolt against Israel, because he knew if he had done it in his first term, the possibility of coming back for his second term should have not been there. So, but you see, I've been to US and I see some of, no, excuse me.
Dr. Tony, please go to the question. We don't have time.
Please, can I, if you don't want me to talk, let me stop. We're not here for a chance play.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Deliver your question.
Lady, we're not here for a chance play.
Okay. Yeah, let's hear the core of the question.
Yes. Some of what has been the role, yes, I've been there. And most of you are politically indolent, just enjoying the pride of being in US. There's no vibrant force to change the political dynamics in Nigeria. It is one. First of all, you tell me, because it's not a question of telling us America is this, their foundation, patriotism. What have you people in US been doing? Because if I know the strength economically, intellectually, technologically of the Nigerian diaspora in US alone, if we mobilize, can put that country, can put Nigeria in order within a month.
Yeah, let me address that.
So finally, you know, you talked about, there's every impossibility for Muslims to conquer Nigeria. There is every possibility, because that is a man with an AK-47 is more powerful than what 100 men without anything. And it has been happening in Nigeria. And I want to tell you that Chad, which model Nigerian Muslims are adopting today, if you take their history from 1960, on the point of their independence, they were being ruled by Christians, 3 Christian presidents before they were overthrown. Today, Chad is a Christian majority country. There's no hope tomorrow for the Christians of the country to reclaim their right of political leadership in Chad. So the possibility of such taking, and it's already taking place in Nigeria, is there. This is something I want you to hear. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think your questions are certainly very relevant and important. First of all, let me address the Nigerian diaspora. The Nigerian diaspora basically started to foment its economic and then political power maybe over the past 10 years. Before then, most Nigerians were basically either economic refugees, or they were people who were still struggling to make ends meet after graduating from many US colleges. Now, it has taken perhaps over the past 10 years for the Nigerian diaspora in America to become a little more organized. And as they get more organized, their impact, even though it's not put out there in headlines all over the place, but they are being quietly taken into account into what happens in Nigeria. Some of the details are not details that I might go into in a public forum here, but at a very minimum, you heard about the recent suspension of weapon sales to Nigeria by the United States, and you think it happened in a vacuum. It would be naive for anyone to think it happened in a vacuum. So that's one example. There are many more many more things in the arsenal that the diaspora is working on that are not going to be broadcasted in the news media and stuff like that. And so you can be sure that the diaspora is not sitting still, even though that a large percentage of the diaspora can still be considered people who are basically more focused on the on their economic survival, because actually the Nigeria as a country is also a very huge drain on the diaspora population, because each person in the diaspora is supporting his family in the diaspora and also to some extent supporting his family back home. And so you find that, you know, there's a limit, you know, even no matter how much money you make, there's a limit to your capacity to maintain two families on two sides of the Atlantic. So that is an issue. But even at that, there are efforts that are going on behind the scenes as we speak. And as far as the Jewish diaspora, the Jewish diaspora did not amass the kind of power they amassed today overnight. In the 1940s, when they first started migrating after the war, I bet you didn't hear much about the Jewish community in the first 20 years of their 20 or 30 years of being here. But they got very much more powerful from the 70s up until now, when one of them actually, you know, got appointed as the Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, and was able to initiate policies that directly protected the Jewish state. Right now in the United States, the Nigerian American community are actually the only community that has been here less than 50 years as active immigrants that have 3 people at very senior levels at the White House right now. 3. One of them at the State Department, one of them in the cabinet, the Treasury, and then another one in the White House. So the diaspora is not sitting still. The diaspora is working, it's challenging, it's not been an easy road, but the thing that you're not going to see is to see the United States or any other country just come and attack one part of Nigeria and overwhelm them so one part can take over. Because even as you are saying that the other side of Nigeria is doing some things to you, the same way they are saying that you are doing some things to them. And when we look at the level of corruption that existed in the government before this government, when the world sees one woman move $1 billion and stash it in the UK, you know, regardless of who is in power, in that case, it was a certain president that was in power, you know, that's a pretty serious issue to defend. How does one begin to defend that? You know, even 5 million is a lot of money in the United States. In Nigeria, maybe they buy Rolls Royces and Bentley and think it's not a lot of money, but it's a lot of money. I once did business in China where they left China, the head of the biggest oil company in China was executed for $2 million bribe. And you find that in Nigeria, people just walk away with, you know, $50 million and stash it in a cesspool, and they go back to their villages and they're celebrated. So there are problems in the south of Nigeria as well as in the north of Nigeria. And that is why the average person who has been governor of, let's say, maybe a southeastern state of Nigeria, and he wants to be president, here when he was governor, he basically plundered his state and took everything there, built a 400-room mansion in his village. You know, are those the same kind of people you expect to run Nigeria if the country is divided? You know, and then, you know, he's sitting either maybe somewhere in the Senate of Nigeria or someplace else, scheming for his next move, which would be if he gets an opportunity to preside over Nigeria as a certain candidate for president, he now plunders the rest of the country, deploys, you know, private jets that he never uses and things like that. So we have to address the problems are both in the south and the north. You got to look at Nigeria holistically. In fact, in some ways there are 2 tribes in Nigeria. There's a tribe of bandits that is in power that is both north and south, and then there's a tribe of the people who are maybe 90% of the country, you know, who take the brunt of the bandit. So all of these things need to be looked at holistically without trying to cover them up with bandages in order to arrive at a potential way forward in Nigeria. I hope
Okay,
that
thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Okay. We please remember that if you have asked a question, kindly lower your hand so that I can know who to call next. Emmanuel Z. Emmanuel Z, your hand is up. Emmanuel Z, if you're not ready, I'm going to call the next person. And remember to keep your question as brief as possible. We are almost out of time, and Mr. Okay has other things to do. So please keep your questions as brief as possible.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Emmanuel Z from Plateau State. I just want to ask you, sir, at what level or at what level of deterioration does the international community intervene in what Nigeria is facing, where the dominant ethnic groups are suppressing the minority ethnic groups? Whoever has followed the state of events in Plateau State will actually tell you that we've had series of killings, and for the first time that a few Fulani people were affected, about 20 or so, while the Plateau people were on their way to bury over 70 people. And then all of a sudden, the president commented, his media aid, even the governor could not stand to defend his people. People have been suffering in silence, and I want to know the level to which it gets to before the international community intervene in cases like that of Nigeria and Plateau States. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you for that. Well, the world is seeing a lot of the violence and all the killing that is going on in places like Plateau, Benue, and Kaduna. They're filing away all these reports, especially as far as the United States is concerned. And the point is that when there's the wheels of government of any nation making a decision turns a little bit slowly because there are procedures, there's communications, there's meetings, there's dialogues that need to happen, except when their own direct interest is threatened. As much as the United States has their naval ships, within 24 hours of every country around the world, they're positioned in all the seas, Atlantic, Pacific, Indian Ocean. But the thing is, their own primary interest is to keep their nation prosperous and stable. And so a lot of the issues in Nigeria, there has to be some proactive activity on the ground that will now spur international help. And in fairness to the gentleman who spoke earlier about the person who has AK-47 versus 100 people who have nothing, that's where that becomes a real issue, because a lot of the issues coming out of Nigeria are accusations that the government is either standing by or encouraging indirect decimation of native populations. So that is a very valid issue. Now how to confront a government that has the monopoly of the instrumentality of war, guns basically, remains something that has to take a total strategic unity within the country of those that are affected. Now, granted, they may not have the luxury to actually go ahead and have all these meetings, but at some point, it becomes a necessity. Even animals in the bush run together when they are threatened. If you ever watch National Geographic and see a lion chasing a band of deers, they are all running together, for reasons, because if they run, if they disparate, the lion goes after one of the parties. So that needs to happen in Nigeria between the communities that are impacted, whether they're in the middle or in the south, or southeast or southwest. There needs to be a kind of coming together, because he who has the gun doesn't necessarily have the brain power to plan and anticipate every kind of move that can come against them. There needs to be a coming together, and then a strategy will come out of it. Nobody with an AK-47 can kill up to 1 million people, because some people will be coming from behind, some people will be coming from the side. You can only shoot in one direction. The army shoots in one direction. And so all of these things, the mindset has to be, okay, we are affected, we are impacted. Okay, let's talk, let's devise a strategy together. And this is a great beginning, of course, but that has to be clearly executed to the point, whereby now you're able to at least defend yourself, and then someone can step in.
Okay, please permit me, Mr. Okey, Mbonu. I promise to keep you for just 1 hour, but it seems as if we'll have to extend the time a bit to accommodate more questions and comments. Is that
that's
okay?
fine. Yes, that's fine.
Okay,
that's fine, because these are very important issues coming up. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to call the next person, Chinyere Abia. Your hand is up. Chinyere.
Good evening.
Sorry, Chineye Abia. I'm sorry for that. Chineye Abia, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, the speaker, for a wonderful expose, and the organizers. I raised my hand when the issues of insecurity in Nigeria, when he pointed to the issues of insecurity, and to just share the reflection of the thoughts that this morning, since yesterday, when the news of Taliban breaking into Kabul and Afghanistan, and looking further we have on global security, and the way it will embolden separatist fundamentalists across the globe, especially in Nigeria, where we're having to deal with fundamentalists, especially Islamic fundamentalists in the north, and they have spread almost across the entire length and breadth of Nigeria. Those are challenges that the world has to, especially Nigeria, has to confront at the time. And for those in diaspora, this is something that you need to consider.
Chineye, I'm sorry, your audio is bad. Can you repeat what you've been saying?
Within the circles of space, because hello?
Yes,
go
your
ahead.
audio was
Go ahead with your
yes,
question.
your audio was breaking a bit. Can you repeat your question?
No, it's not a question, it's a comment on the issues that has happened in Afghan for 2 days, and how that will affect global security, and the role of diasporans to continue to bring the tables of discussion, around centers of power in developing countries, because like we know, the current leadership in Nigeria, when they came on board, promised to deal with these fundamentalists within 3 months. We are 6 years down, there hasn't been
Well, thank you, Mr. Chineye. If I can just address a little bit of your concerns, which is certainly concerning to all of us as people of Nigerian descent, whether we're on the inside or on the outside. There are problems in Nigeria, no doubt about it. Okay, now the limits for now of diaspora engagement would be so far the diaspora has actually stretched itself to provide material support in terms of the basic needs of life to the relatives and friends and contacts and associates that they have in Nigeria. And they also have their limitations because, as some of you know, as some of us know, there's a lot of the work ethic that is required to maintain a life anywhere outside of Nigeria is also pretty exhausting. When it comes to the policies of Nigeria at this point, there are different ways to look at it. One is that the government of Nigeria of today has a limit in terms of how long it's going to stay in power. So certain things regardless of what anyone does, that time is ticking. And then second of all, the people of Nigeria have to begin to exhibit what I call a sense of conscience and balls to confronting and containing their own government. They don't have to go out with arms on the street to fight against the police, because of course they will be overwhelmed, but they can organize themselves in a manner whereby the government can only try to maybe suppress opinions or voices of reason, but they cannot do it totally, even if they wanted to. Now, the people of Nigeria at this point, including people in southern Nigeria and northern Nigeria, have had this form of enabling of bad leaders, people who they know to be bona fide armed robbers, for lack of a better word, becoming governors of a state. Now, I remember a long time ago as a child in Nigeria, one of the most famous armed robbers in Nigeria was a gentleman called Dr. Ishola Oyenusi, who was based out of Lagos. He faced a very huge firing spot when he was eventually caught. You know how much Dr. Oyenusi stole from the bank? It was 35,000 pounds, 35,000 naira of the day's money, whatever that the unit was. And he was arrested and tried and faced firing squad. Now, today, a given governor, whether it's in the north or the south, goes ahead and misappropriates 50 million, $100 million of every revenue coming to his state. But some of them pretty much appropriate 80% of the revenue coming to their state and leave 20% for the work that they need to do. And that's not realistic. And then the next day, they find themselves in the Senate of Nigeria. Some people are actually hailing them. Now, that is what I consider depravity and connivance of the governed. And these people don't have to be living in the north or in the south or in the west or in the middle, but it's mind-boggling to see what people tolerate, because the president of Nigeria at this point in time cannot be everywhere, actually. Yes, he might have some form of an agenda that we may or may not know what it is, but he cannot be everywhere. He cannot be at the states, he cannot be at the local government, at least in terms of, deploying resources. So people need to express some outrage rather than enabling people that they know that are essentially daylight bandits to lead them. So the problem is both leadership and followership, but it's more of leadership, of course, because the leader has to show by example. If a given leader leaves office with perhaps some roads, infrastructure, whatever, done in their state, and has not amassed billions in all manner of conflict of interest, then that leader may deserve another opportunity. But for that leader to be clearly somebody who, and every single, we find these issues in both the north and south of Nigeria. In the north, it's much worse sometimes because the people naturally even question their leaders at all. But in the south, it also exists. So, everyone in Nigeria, all of the 200 and some change million people, really needs to get up to a certain level of alertness if we need to take the country back and move it in a different direction. And even if it eventually splits along northern or southern lines, the challenges that exist today as far as corruption and even insecurity, whether it's in the southeast or in the southwest, may survive that split and continue, given the caliber of the leaders we have in Nigeria today. So it's something that all of us as people of Nigerian descent to really be ready to do something differently. That's part of
Okay.
the.
Thank you so much. Remember that if you have spoken, kindly lower your hands so I would understand the hierarchy of hands that I can see here. Comrade Christian Ikenna. Comrade Christian Ikenna. Can see your hand up. Comrade Christian Ikenna, if you're not here, I would move on. Okay, so I do not think Comrade Christian is here. So let us talk about a bit of the Nigerian American Council. You were the former executive director, and this is something that this is an advocacy council that is trying to correct the politics in Nigeria, if I'm not mistaken. But can you tell us what that is about?
Yes, certainly. The Nigerian American Council, of which I remain a co-founder and one of the leaders through the years, including my leadership of the council as the executive director and CEO, was designed to be able to shape United States policy toward Nigeria. And the idea was because we are already here at the seat of power in the United States, that we have an opportunity to interact with those who actually make policy, make the United States policy toward Nigeria. And, you know, we sort of, sometimes it becomes overwhelming when you actually look at what's happening in Nigeria, and you have to change your strategies, because at the time that we founded the council, the main issue Nigeria was facing was the Boko Haram insecurity in the Northeast. So today is a different situation because Nigeria is on the brink. And so it requires a total reassignment of what the mission is and how to influence and steer US policy toward helping to combat certain the problems in Nigeria this time. Because the truth is that the problems in Nigeria right now are multifaceted. They are much more than it was about 10, 15 years ago.
Okay, and how far have the council gone? Can you just tell us anything about it, the progress that's made?
Yes. Yeah. For about the year 2012, 2013, the council was able to engage with policymakers, especially the United States Congress and the executive branch, to enact certain policies. In fact, the first successful policy that we were able to be able to proactively deploy was getting the United States to establish that Boko Haram was a terrorist organization. Before the council was created, the United States did not have sufficient interest and sufficient knowledge about that matter to be able to make that decision. But when we came on board, we were able to initiate a discussion of that matter and get the US to enact policies reflecting that Boko Haram was a terrorist organization. Now, that was one major victory that we had at the time. As I said, today, the issues at stake are actually much more substantial, and they will require a much more careful thought and careful engagement. And one of the main issues that is really a quagmire as far as the Nigerian American Council and the Nigerian American population is to whether breaking up the country is in the overall interest of the people that form the country at this point in time. Because we want to be careful about taking a final leap along those lines, because there's also potential for a serious abuse of power by new actors, even if Nigeria is divided today along regional lines. So
okay, Comrade Christian Ikenna, your hand is still up. If you are here, the platform is yours. But if you're not ready, I'm just going to move on.
All right. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yeah, I must commend the organizers of this event. Okay, my question is, what do you have to say? What do you have to say about our electoral system, which is actually dying off as the day goes by? Just like, okay, it's only here in Nigeria that we heard some time ago that the states in this country and an election runner, someone who finished as the fourth position, finally coming back to become the governor of the state, and taking it to the Nigeria as a nation now. On the aspect of votes buying when it comes to during the electionary period, please, I would like you to actually shed more light on it so that
Yeah, thank you, Comrade Abamara. You raised some very pertinent questions there. Now, the electoral process in Nigeria is obviously supposed to be one of the foundational underpinnings of the democracy that Nigeria is purporting to practice. But of course, we know that it's been bedeviled with problems. And here's what we see right now. We see the National Assembly having essentially betrayed the country in the last opportunity they had to reform the bill by not passing an electronic transmission act to bolster the electoral laws as they are now. So that in itself is a very massive betrayal that we expect Nigerians to take a position on down the road. Maybe now, maybe tomorrow, maybe in the next few weeks, who knows? Because that's a total betrayal. Now, what they have done is essentially to set the stage where elections can simply be called by one person, one returning officer, somebody rigged into office, as in what happened in one of the states in the South, which you mentioned about the candidate who did not amass enough votes becoming governor. Now, I'll tell you, in spite of what I call the evil machinations of the political actors, there's two ways this could play out. One of the ways is that even if the people do not protest this injustice, this robbery today, but the issues are still brewing. So something can happen tomorrow or in the next few weeks or the next couple of months that can trigger a massive reaction that can consume whoever these bad actors are. Now, the other thing also is that the overhaul that is needed in Nigeria at this point, the other disappointment is that the judiciary, not all of the judiciary, but certainly the judiciary at the top level, have allowed politics to infiltrate the judiciary. So whereby a matter comes before the judiciary today and there's abundant evidence that injustice has been done, and the arbiters of justice decide to still go ahead and maintain the injustice, that becomes a problem that I realize is beyond the ordinary person on the street, because the ordinary person is supposed to have this judiciary as their circle, as a place to run to for cover. And when they cannot do that, then what's probably going to happen is that certain things are being put in place by default, whether the actors know it or not, because we find that in places where people who consider themselves invincible or have so much power forget that power is essentially transient. It's very temporary. 4 years is not a long time. 2 years is not a long time. And you never know what the actors that will come by in the next 2 years are going to do in order to rectify the problem, as long as they mean well. Now, the other thing also is that there are things that may be beyond every human being, but those who think they have power and those who don't think they have power. And those things, as much as Nigerians can be religious people, maybe they can understand a little bit of that. But even if you strip religion away from it, you find that people, there are powers that can, at some point, when something becomes overwhelming, there are powers that change things on their own by default. Just like many years ago, Mr. Abacha was all set to become the maximum ruler of Nigeria. He had basically muscled all of the political actors of the day, and everyone had cowered before him. And he was totally invincible at that point. But we all know how the story ended. The people apparently had limitations as to what they could do, but we all saw how the story ended. So there are elements like that that are within the realm of the unknown. Even for great powers like the United States, also sometimes find themselves in those quagmires where, well, we've done everything humanly possible, and we are not able to change this, or we're not able to affect it in this way, then maybe something else will happen. But that does not mean, though, that people are going to fold their hands and just wait for some kind of a divine intervention, because even God himself doesn't work like that. God wants you to step out and do something. God put all the trees in the forest so you can cut it down and make tables and chairs. God is never going to step out and go and cut it and make table and present it before you and make coffee, put it before you. So we all have to be of that mindset that there's something for every human to do. There is something for us to do. Even animals do things to contain whatever danger that they are facing. They may run together, they might have some kind of a whistle among them to alert themselves, but they do something. But we find that sometimes there's a large amount of, I don't want to use a word like timidity, but sometimes Nigerians just, wait for miracles. Now, when God has given you weapons like the thoughts in your head to be able to sit together and think, the legs, the hands, you have to use it. It will be, in fact, I don't think God himself is happy if you don't do anything. If you don't do anything at all, you say, okay, if you're going to sit there and let him kill you, then it's your funeral. So there has to be a mindset of what can we do? And when we think what can we do, it's not what can we do as individuals. We need to band together in 3s and 4s and 5s, across community groups, across regions of Nigeria. We need to band together, because he who bands together will generate ideas. You just throw the idea out there and say, what do we do about this? At least hear each other out. And if there's a stubborn actor that is standing outside with a gun, that's the most he can do, is stand outside with a gun. He cannot prevent the coalescing of ideas that can bring solutions. Not doing anything is not an option. There has to be something, even if it's talking and discussing, because you'll be surprised. You'll be amazed at the solutions that will come to your head once you begin to discuss with other people. So I hope that helps out in answering some of these questions about the elections and how to contain the people who are basically taking the will of the people away.
Okay, thank you so much. Just before I let you go, let's talk a bit about Anambra November 6th elections. Right now, there are insecurity challenges in Anambra, and threats have been made that elections will not happen. What is your sentiment concerning the entire elections?
Okay. Well, I understand there are security challenges in Anambra, but I think the election needs to happen for the sole purpose of creating a model or an example for the bigger election that is coming up in 2 years, or even the other elections that may happen in the states. And having said that, the people of Anambra, especially given the location of Anambra State, where it's surrounded by, some states that have not really done well in terms of produced the right kind of leadership in their states. Anambra must set an example. And in setting an example, Anambra must not allow a bandit to just show up from anywhere just because that bandit carried away substantial amounts of money from wherever it is that I don't know, to come there and become governor of that state. Now, if you're going to buy a state, unless you're giving everyone 10 billion naira, so that way they don't have to worry about you anymore. They can go and build their own some small local government areas inside their household. Then money should not be the factor. We see certain kinds of craziness that goes on in some parts of the southeastern part of Nigeria, but that craziness has to have its limitations when it comes to Anambra State. People should take control and take charge of what goes on there. There's no one who's going to show up and shoot 100 people that are standing in line to vote. And after that vote, stand in line for the vote to be counted. There should be a minimum standard that Anambra must set. If Anambra sets that minimum standard, perhaps the rest of the states in the surrounding region can begin to adapt to that standard, and then the country can begin to look towards that as a model. But giving up or sitting still and waiting for somebody to come and give 5,000 naira to widows or 3,000 naira to widows on election day, or somebody that that has a history of going to compromise the electoral officer after all the votes are cast, and then give the electoral officer 100 million naira to take away, to announce a contrary number from what was voted. All those things, the people of the state need to be on their guard, because as a state that has produced many elites around Nigeria and around the world, there's no excuse to fail. If the state fails and power goes into the wrong hand, then the reputation of the people of that region will sink like a stone that you throw up in the air with nothing to hold it. So it's very, very important that whoever becomes governor of that state after the November elections be somebody that is of decent reputation. And that basically will also not mean that the person is the wealthiest. They don't have to be the wealthiest. In fact, some people in Nigeria are more suitable to be in business than to be in public service. Public service is public service. You can go and make big money in business. You don't have to come into the public service space. It's okay. It's okay to be in any other line of work. But in a situation where either you're coming in because you think you're the wealthiest, or some people have sat around in the capital city in Abuja or elsewhere and determined that this person, we're not going to let them in because they've been around, or because he may not have all the money in the world, but he to give us that should not be the case. The people should watch out for that. And I'm personally not endorsing any candidate at this point in time, but you look at the antecedents of the various candidates, you look at the corruption baggages that some of the parties already have as their pedigree, and you know what's going to happen if they get into office. That basically they get into office to plunder the state and share the resources among themselves. People who pay 25 million naira to get a ticket. I know people in Nigeria might think that is normal, but even in the richest country in the world, in the United States, the cost to get a party form to run as governor of a given state is probably not more than maybe $1,500, and the rest of the money might be spent in campaigning and putting up billboards and buying T-shirts and things like that. So people should not get confused in Anambra State and thinking that the person who brings the most money, regardless of their antecedents, is the person that deserves to become governor of that great state. That should not happen. So hopefully that helps out in shaping the people's mindset. So, moderator, you still there, right? Moderator? Perhaps we could take a few more questions.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I have kept you long enough, so
Augusta, are you still
I would have
there?
to. Yes, I am. I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay,
Yeah.
so I would have to round up the session now, but kindly indulge Elumba Television. He would want to keep you for a few minutes for an informal chat, but let me end the session now so we can stop the recording. Remember to follow. We have been speaking about analyzing the current decline of Nigeria in the international community, and we have been speaking to a former commissioner of housing in Maryland, Washington, D.C. He is also a